Hey, this is Rachel Cunningham, and you're listening to Joyful Love, episode 97. If you're ready to bring joy and connection back to your marriage, stick around. Each week, I give you the tools to up-level your thinking, open your heart, and bring joy and fun back to your relationship. Because it's not enough just to stay married. We want to love being married. Hello, friends. We're back this week with the part 2 series from 2 years ago that we're going to be replaying. Today's episode is all about getting comfortable with uncomfortable conversations. You know, every one of us, if you are married for longer than a minute, is going to have difficult conversations throughout our marriage. So if difficult conversations are part of a relationship, part of a long-term relationship, we must start to get comfortable with them. We must be willing to have those uncomfortable conversations and get comfortable feeling uncomfortable. So today, I'm going to teach you how to do that. I'm going to show you how to explore your own emotions while you're feeling uncomfortable so that you can understand them, so that you can lean into them, and so that you can keep that conversation flowing instead of escaping it. Okay, enjoy this episode. Let's continue our conversation about communicating better. Last week, we covered part 1 of communicating better, where we learned about our different styles of communicating. If you missed that episode, go back and listen to it. You're not going to want to miss it. I'd also like you to listen to episode 9 if you haven't already. That episode 9, is all about letting go of the rule books that we have for each other so that we can actually build a deeper connection. Those 2 episodes are critical in helping you to understand how to have better relationships and better conversations in all of life, not just with your partner, but with all the people, because we love all the people, right? We love our parents, we love our children, we love our friends, and the strangers we meet on the street. We want to bring this relationship advice not just for our partners, but into all the world, because the world deserves love. So go back and listen to those 2 episodes and start applying it to all of your relationships. Okay, so for today, we're going to continue this communication topic. So let's find out how to have a difficult conversation, shall we? Because I know we all have difficult conversations. Sometimes we have slightly difficult conversations every day of our lives. So it's very beneficial to have a plan and some steps to get through them so that you can maintain your connection even if they happen on a regular basis. So if you're in any long-term relationship, at some point, you're going to have discussions that feel very difficult. We've all been there, whether it's a planned discussion or a conversation that starts out easy, but then it just starts to slightly go off and tension starts to build and you don't even know where it came from. But all of a sudden you start to feel that stress, right? And your nervous system starts to go on overload, feeling really tense and even anxious at times. So first, I want you to understand that this is simply the body's natural response when something feels uneasy. Your breathing starts to go faster, your heart starts racing a little, and you feel tension in different parts of your body. When you feel this initial reaction to a conversation where miscommunication or confusion of understanding each other starts to creep in, it's important to pause and notice what you're feeling. This can be a quick thing. I'm not saying like you have to tell your partner or whoever you're talking to, hey, wait a second, I need to stop and notice this, right? It can just be a quick thing in your mind that you can say, okay, what am I feeling here? Take a deep breath and say, I'm feeling tense or I'm feeling misunderstood. And then remind yourself, I'm okay. And I can handle this emotion without avoiding it and without fighting it. Because when you try to avoid or resist those first emotions of confusion and tension, you end up trying to buffer or numb the feeling a little bit by running from the conversation, right? You might even actually say, I'm out of here. I'm not going to talk about this, which ultimately makes the other person feel ignored and unheard. Or you might also tend to people please, right? Some of us tend to people please to avoid the discomfort of a hard conversation. So we quickly try to protect the other person's feelings. And then we end up being inauthentic in our conversation because we're just so concerned about making sure there's peace kept. Or the other option that we do sometimes when we're not comfortable with just feeling that initial emotion is we resist the feeling, right? We're like, I don't want to feel misunderstood. I don't want to feel confused. So we resist the emotion, which causes us to lash out with criticism and blame. So to have a difficult conversation, you really need to get comfortable feeling uncomfortable. And when you're comfortable feeling that little bit of uncomfort at the beginning, you're not going to layer on all the other emotions of frustration and overwhelm and exhaustion on top of it. If you can just feel uncomfortable, that's okay, right? Like it's okay that sometimes we have conversations that feel a little bit tense. It's okay that sometimes we have conversations that feel a little bit confusing, right? We're taking two brains and we're communicating, and sometimes that can be confusing, and that's okay, right? It's okay to feel that. So when you are living in the present moment and trusting yourself to feel all the feelings, now you can proceed to communicate with maturity and total love. Feeling your emotions here is so important, but it takes practice, right? Our primitive brains are so used to avoiding these emotions at all cost because that primitive brain thinks that it's protecting us. So we either fight or we flee. But fighting and fleeing screws up relationships. It messes up the communication. So that's the first thing, is you have to be willing to feel your emotions. Breathe, notice the emotion, name the emotion, and lean into it instead of avoiding it. And when you're comfortable feeling uncomfortable, now you are ready to actually have that difficult conversation. Now, the second step to having a difficult conversation is to drop the need to be right. Most of us have no idea how to communicate without blame and frustration and judgment and criticism and the need to prove ourselves and be right. Again, it's our primal need to be right. But let's look at this a little bit closer. What does being right get you? The need to be right is an indulgent emotion, and it gets you nothing. Now, there's nothing wrong with that initial primal need, but when we hold on to this desire to be right, we risk losing the connection with the people that we love. With our partners, we risk losing emotional and physical intimacy because we're on defense. And when you're on defense, when you're defensive, you purposefully put up those walls to block connection and intimacy. But if you give up the need to be right about something, there is no need for defense. And when you don't have defense, there's also no need for offense. And when you don't have defense and you don't have offense, there's no war to be fought any longer. So next time you have a conversation that could be difficult, start the conversation willing to be wrong, willing to learn, and willing to hear their side of the story. Even check in right now with yourself and start to notice how you're feeling about that. How do you feel when I suggest that you be willing to be wrong? If you feel uneasy about being willing to be wrong, this could be costing you connection in your relationships. And you might be saying, but Rachel, I am right. I know I'm right. And I want you to know that it does not matter. We're talking about healthy ways of communicating here, and demanding that your person knows that you are right does not help your conversation in any way. So instead of starting a conversation with, I'm right because of all of these reasons, I want you to start the conversations in a different way. I want you to say, okay, tell me why you're right. So instead of coming at someone with, here's all the reasons why I'm right, I want you to say, tell me all the reasons why you are right. And then you listen, right? Just imagine this simple thing, what it could do for your conversations. If instead of trying to prove your side first, you simply listen and you say, I want to know all the reasons why you feel that you're right and why you think that you are right. And then you listen, and you don't, while you are listening, you don't think of and plan all the things that you're going to say next to prove to them why they're wrong. You simply listen, and you hear them fully while they are speaking to you. Now, it may not be a conflict of right or wrong. It could be anything, right? You might disagree on how money is spent, which could also be, I'm right in the way I'm thinking and you're wrong in the right way I'm thinking. But it could also be things like we're not on the same page of who does the chores or who helps with the kids' homework. Or maybe one of you is just really in a bad mood and you can't even remember why you're arguing or upset with each other, but you just know that you are, right? And maybe all the things of life have compiled into this one moment where you're bringing all of your tension in life into your relationship. The same concept applies. You might just say, tell me what you're thinking, or how are you feeling about this, or tell me what you want to do right now. Really help them to know that you are willing to hear what they're thinking. So it doesn't matter exactly what you say, as long as you know that your initial purpose to have a healthy but difficult conversation is to hear their perspective or why they are thinking what they are. And then you truly listen, you hear their points, and you put yourself in their story. And while you're doing this, you continue to purposefully release your defenses. You release your own ego and your need to be right. So you make a true effort to understand where they're coming from. Now, I know what you're probably thinking at this point. You're probably thinking that you would like that same benefit, right? You want to be heard as well. You want the other person to give you the time to express your own story as well. And for the purpose of communicating better, in these difficult moments, I want you to know that it's not necessary to demand that. So just try this. Let go of the need to be right and be willing to try a new way in your next conversation. Now, if I was talking to the other person, whether it's your partner or someone else you're having a difficult time communicating with, I would tell them the same thing. But they're not here that I know of, unless you're listening to this together, which is amazing. But if you are the only one here, I want you to know that you are here for a reason, and I'm talking to you. You're the one that is going to learn to manage your own difficult conversations, right? You get to take ownership of that. See the beauty in that for a moment. Of course, I want all the people in my life too, from my husband to my kids to my friends and extended family. I want them all to learn how to listen and drop the need to be right. It would be so much easier if everyone in my life simply got curious about each other and listened with love during all of our conversations. But if I'm given the choice of trying to force people to listen by demanding it, versus simply making my own choices to grow and manage my own emotions, I know that I'm going to choose my own personal growth over trying to force someone else to change. There's so much beauty in that, friends. Like if you can really accept that, like, and realize the beauty in owning your own self-growth in this and in your own difficult conversations, it's going to really help you to expand your love and growth, not just for other people, but for yourself as well in the process. This is part of dropping your own ego, of letting go of the need and desire to even be right. And when you get really good at this, your spirit and emotions become more peaceful, not just in your conversations, but in your whole life. And you'll be an example of what's possible to the people around you. That's where the beauty comes in. Letting go of the need to be right also brings more peace to your immediate conversation, because you're not going to have that pushback, because all you're going to say is, tell me why you're right. Tell me what you're thinking. Tell me why you want this. I want to hear you out. I want to understand where you're coming from. Let me give you an example. So let's say you've asked your partner to be home by 6 o'clock to help with dinner and spend time, with you and the kids eating dinner together. There may be lots of reasons around this. Maybe you want your kids to have dinner on time before they get hangry, and you want your partner to make sure they're home to help with that. So let's say they come home late for the 5th time in a row, and you and the kids decide to go ahead and eat again before your partner gets home. So instead of lashing out or giving your partner the cold shoulder, you're going to ask your partner, so tell me everything. What's going on that's making it so hard to get home by 6? I want to hear what happened. I want to hear what's going on. And he might say, well, I forgot something I had to do at work, or this project took too long, or, traffic was bad, or any number of issues, right? So now you have their story, and you've allowed yourself to be in their shoes and see it from their perspective. After you've heard their story out, you're going to move to step number 3, which is to simplify it down to just the facts, right? We're going to drop all the drama that your brain wants to tell you about this issue, and you're going to simplify it down to just the facts. So you're going to say, okay, what are the facts here? The facts are neutral. Everyone agrees on them. So the facts of our example here are, I asked you to be home by 6, and you don't get home until 6:30. Now, once you are, number 1, willing to feel uncomfortable, and step 2, have listened fully to their story, and step 3, you've separated the facts, now you're ready for step 4. Step 4 is to understand that they have a story about what's going on, and you have a story about what's going on. So no one is right or wrong. You just have different sentences in your brain about the facts. Now, the fact might be, I asked you to be home by 6, and this week you haven't been home until 6:30. You can both agree on those facts, right? Your story might look like this. They don't care about having dinner with me and the kids, right? That's not a fact, right? That's just the story that you have in your head, that they don't care enough about your family. Now, your partner's story might be that you are not being flexible enough, right? That you're not being flexible and understanding enough, and that you don't care about what he has to do. So let's recap. Step 1, you got to be willing to be uncomfortable. Okay, this is going to be an uncomfortable conversation, and that's okay. Sometimes we have to feel uncomfortable to get to the other side of a solution. So number 2, drop the need to be right. Listen to them and hear their story. Number 3, only the facts, only the things that you agree on. Number 4, you each get 1 sentence to tell what you're making the facts mean. So in this case, it's, I'm making that mean that you don't respect my time. You're making that mean that I'm not flexible. And now here's the beautiful part. Step number 5. The part that can only happen peacefully if you've taken the time to do the simple steps of 1 through 4. Step 5 is the point where you only talk with solutions in mind. So you don't bring up the past. You don't bring up all of the stories that are in your mind of he doesn't care and he thinks I don't care and all of that, right? You drop all the drama, you drop all the stories, and you just work in solutions. So you only discuss solutions from this point on. Once you've understood their story, once you've put yourself in their position, once you've let them know how you feel, now you say, okay, what are we going to do about this? We don't have to bring criticism in. We don't have to bring judgment in. We simply say, what's the solution? How can we solve this? So you may say, like in this situation, you may say, I can be flexible by 15 minutes without the kids melting down for dinner. What can you do? And he may say, I'll set the timer to remind me to get out of here 5 minutes early to beat the traffic. And then just start to open your mind to other solutions. You know, I had a client have this exact situation happen. And when she discussed this with her partner, they came up with a solution to plan a day or two per week where he actually stayed extra an hour or two to finish up projects. But they determined the day ahead of time so that she knew which days to expect that on. Then they scheduled a time on the weekends where he took over dinner with the kids one night so that she could spend extra time on the projects that she needed to catch up on. They never would have gotten to this solution if they didn't take the time to feel, listen, understand their own unique stories, and then talk with a solution in mind. There are so many possibilities to solving disagreements and difficult conversations, but you'll only find those solutions if you stop judging, you stop making the conversation about you being right, and you start listening and understanding their perspective, and then only talking with solutions in mind from that point on. So these 5 steps will help you with any person you're struggling with, whether it's your partner, a kid, a coworker, whether it's a really big thing or something very small like getting home in time for dinner, right? So whether it's your partner or a kid or a coworker, this type of communication can only connect you. When you take the time to feel your emotions and not be scared of them, right? To just really tap into them and say, okay, I'm feeling uncomfortable right now, or I'm feeling misunderstood right now. And then truly listening to the other person's perspective. And then you separate the facts from the story. You say, okay, these are the facts. Everything else is just stories that we're making up in our heads. And then you understand what you're both making that mean for your situation. When you can take those steps and do that, your willingness to come up with workable solutions is going to be so much better. And in this situation, in these kind of situations where you're working on these difficult conversations, your hearts are going to be able to remain connected. And disagreements aren't going to be such a big deal anymore because you begin to trust yourselves to work through anything. My husband and I have difficult conversations all the time, and they don't lead to arguments and fights and hurt feelings anymore because we understand, hey, this is just part of 2 people communicating. Part of 2 people living together is that we have to work on difficult things of managing our home and managing our business and things like that. So it's just part of our journey together. Part of our journey of loving and communicating is having those conversations that sometimes feel uncomfortable. And that's okay. It doesn't mean anything about our love. It doesn't mean anything about whether or not we care or not. So I want you to know that as you start to implement these things, your brain is going to resist. It's going to fight back and say, this isn't working. If that's the case, I want you to know that you're not alone. If you resonate with this, but only enough to get frustrated, I want you to schedule an appointment with me to see how weekly coaching might help you. Your first consultation is free with 0 commitment. I'm here to help. I'm here to help you decide whether or not coaching is best for you. So you can use me if you need to. Take advantage of that. Together, we can take your relationship from mediocre to happy and healthy. Okay, I hope that you have enjoyed those 2 episodes. Sometimes, it's nice to go back and re-listen to episodes and kind of take some notes and do a little bit of journaling on where you're good at this stuff already. Because sometimes some of the things I say, you're probably already like, oh, I'm really good at that already. And then sometimes there's little shifts in there that you can make to take it up a notch and really improve your relationship with some of the small tweaks that I talk about in here. So it's nice to journal and say, where am I good at this already? Let me take a moment to be proud of myself for that. And also, what needs to be improved? What can I improve this week and practice on this week? It's so good to try to kind of get those thoughts out of your head and onto a piece of paper. So I highly encourage that sometimes you journal about these things. I also want to welcome you to get on my newsletter if you're not already. You can do that by going to rachelcunningham.com and signing up for the free course on there. That'll put you onto my newsletter. You'll get weekly tips on improving your life, your marriage, your mindset, your relationships in general. And you'll also be the first to know about the new shifts that I'm making for you. I've got a lot of new things coming up in the next few weeks, and I want you to be the first in the know. So go to rachelcunningham.com, sign up for that free newsletter, and I will see you on the inside. Have a great week, everyone. Thanks for listening to Joyful Love. If you'd like to know more about my work, come visit me at rachelcunningham.com. That's Rachel, spelled with an A-E-L, Cunningham.com.